Yeah. Right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting. I'd like to say thank you to Teresa for coming along to the meeting and supporting us. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank David Watts, Director of Adult Social Services, who's joined us tonight, and all the rest of you who've come along. Are there any apologies for absence, please?
Chair, Councillor Tom Beattie.
Thank you. Any others? Right. I've been informed there's no requests for any speakers. I will move briskly on. Are there any declarations of interest? No. Minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of October. Are they accurate? Can I sign them off as accurate?
Move that be signed, Chair.
Thank you very much. Show of hands. So I've got Stephen North seconding, and we're unanimous. Thank you. We now come to item 5, programme governance structure, and Lisa Hyde, Director of Transformation, is going to introduce this report. Lisa.
Good evening, and thank you, Chair. It's my first update to you as the Director of Transformation for Northants. 3 reports on the agenda tonight, but this first one covers the changes of the proposed programme governance arising from the uncoupling of the programme into North and West as we move into what is this key delivery phase for this part of the whole LGR programme. So, Francesca, if you have the slides there of the governance, please. The governance process will allow each respective shadow authority and Unitary to concentrate on the elements that relate specifically to North and West, as outlined in the blueprint. So in some cases where the North is a lead or host for a function, for instance. But just as importantly, it still retains the joint implementation executive, which was required by the structural change order, to work through and endorse those matters that require us still to work jointly. So if I can take you to the first slide.
Is this the correct one, Lisa?
No, that's the structure item for later on in the agenda.
Okay, bear with me.
If it helps, it's page 15.
No, that's fine. It's one, bear with me, that's fine.
That's it, thank you. So this outlines what I've said earlier in respect of North-West specific joint deliverables relating back to that blueprint, critical products for day one readiness, and the post-go live planning and stabilisation piece. Go to the next slide, which really illustrates the same, but shows you that against that day one timeline to be very clear about the implementation tasks for go live, the implementation of day one, which will necessitate going over that post-vesting day, and then the delivery and transformation plans going forward. Next slide, please. So getting down to the most important things here, which show the key governance changes. Now you will recognise the grey box in the middle belonging to the joint implementation executive, and the blue boxes down the right of this slide represent the North Shadow Authority already in place, the overview and scrutiny and shadow executive with its contributing task and finish groups. The extra box here is that one that shows you the North Implementation Executive, the part where we will be considering issues pertinent to the North only and chaired by the shadow leader. And you will see that is mirrored exactly over on the other side in the West. So the idea is to reduce scope and time and enables us to take away those things that we can consider, as I said, for the North and West specifically, and then come together as the joint implementation executive for those important joint. That may be beyond my abilities at the moment. Next slide, please. This next slide shows how this is supported by the officer boards below. again split north and west whilst retaining the joint board, but now the officer boards will be chaired by the new chief executives and supported by myself as the transformation director for the north, and again mirrored exactly to the structure in the west. Slide 5. This outlines the programme boards, things you'll all be familiar with as part of the regular programme update. The main changes here being that the place boards quite clearly have been split north and west, so they're at each end of the programme boards, with the intention that the appointments of the new directors of place will chair those in the future. But currently Martin Hammond will be chairing this as interim for the north. And just to say that Ian Vincent, the Chief Executive of Daventry, has done a sterling job up to this point of chairing the county-wide place board, and thanks to him, to go out to him to bring it to this place as part of our handover. You will also see from this slide that the chairs of the programme boards remain, but as the new senior management team for the north arrive, they step into those deputy chair roles as part of that handover. So you will see outlined in the grey boxes there on the slide. And Cathy Hadley, the Joint Director of Children's Services, takes the chair for the Children's Services Board. Chair, I hope that provides some clarity, re the proposed governance process going forward, and as I say, reflects the changing and responsive status of the whole local government review programme into this key implementation phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm seeing nobody wanting to ask you a question at the moment, but there's any, yes, Stephen North.
Thank you, Chair. You're moving on very quickly there. It's just a comment more. Yes, nice try. Just a comment more than anything. And I raised this last time when we originally did the GIE, so it's only more than a comment and acknowledgement. But obviously the arrows go one way to the executive, and I appreciate that's an illustrative point. And I also, Chair, appreciate we're in the implementation period, and of course, as we're in a shadow executive, we haven't got actually any powers. But of course, at the end of the day, a lot of effort rests with this executive to deliver the unitary and vesting day as laid out in the structural change order, which is why we haven't got many council meetings. So, also, it's a passing comment, Chair, that that I hope that it's a two-way channel. I know it's an illustrative in relation to the arrows, that it's a two-way channel, that actually if the executive actually wishes to raise anything, they can go back the other way towards the board, that obviously if any issues arise through the implementation period, or back to the board if there are any issues arise as we're going forward, because I think it's important that it's recognised that the through the order, the actual powers lie with the executive, which is why we haven't got many council meetings. So if there's any issues going forward, and as you've said and we've all said, if we're paddling our own canoe, if we want to set a certain direction, that we have that channel to go back the other way, rather than just being a receiver and just noting and nodding through from now till April. Chair, thanks.
Thank you, Teresa Graham.
Thank you, Chair. Just trying to unmute myself. Just to reassure Councillor North, if you look at the structure flow and how it's laid out, elected members are at every single level in the structures. So it goes through a new board, which is set up for the North, which is, I'm trying to think of all the acronyms now. So we have a JIB, a WIB and a NIB. So we have a North Implementation Board, which will be chaired by the Chief Exec. But above that, we've also got a joint or a North Implementation Exec. So a NI, a Y and a JI. So that would have the informal executive. So that is another process by which members have an opportunity to scrutinise. And then also anything that is escalated goes into the JIE. So I would be amazed and surprised if anything that goes to the executive, this executive has not been scrutinised at least 3 times by elected members before it gets there. But it's a full two-way process the whole way. But I certainly take your point.
Excellent.
Thank you, Chair.
And I'm sure, Stephen, you know that we'd never knowingly ignore you. Has anybody else got anything they would? Martin.
I propose we move to recommendation 3, Chair, happy to.
Are you proposing it? Can I have a seconder? I've got Jason Smithers seconding it. Can we have a show of hands, please? That looks unanimous. Thank you very much. We now go on to item 6, programme status. Lisa is going to present this again, but with the help of George Candler and Glenn Hammonds. Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. This second report will be more familiar to you, the programme status summary. However, you will note we are now going to report the PLACE programme on a north and west basis. So, Francesca, if you've got the slides there, please. So we could probably move straight to slide 3, as slide 2 just has the content. Thank you. And the next one, please. Thank you. Oh, no, back again. That's the one. Thank you. So as you will see there, Place North, Place West, now divided into 2. Actually, there are no particular issues. They are reporting green as Place, both currently as at the 30th of October, of which this report covers, and the estimated forward is also at a green status. So no cause for concerns there. There are currently 3 programme areas rated at amber that we consider will be rated at amber going forward. So I'll just go through those if I may. Firstly, finance. This position has changed since the last report and is now at an amber rating with an amber projected going forward. A couple of issues relating to this. One, heavy dependency on key specialist and interim staff, finance staff, during this programme going forward. Lots of work to do in this current time and reliance on those. And the second, as outlined, is the impact on the Sovereign Council financial close down positions as audit activity continues to run on and could impact and will impact on the opening position of the new authorities. So important that we reflect that in the programme status going forward. Both corporate and children's remain amber. In terms of corporate, again, a very key time. You'll be aware, and we've got on the agenda going forward, the restructure of tiers 1 to 3 of the new authorities, not to be confused with other tiers 1 to 3 that are much in discussion today. That the HR process that relates to that and the disaggregation of NCC staff to North and West is a complex and really important process. So the staff consultation process is open. And whilst these pieces of work are underway, the overall status of this programme requires a continuing watching brief and will be retained at amber during that time. As I say, that is coming up on your agenda later as well. In terms of children's, this RAG rating is at the 30th of October, but we are happy to report, and as you'll be aware, the trust went live as planned on the 1st of November, and that was a significant deadline that had been met. You will see the report as at the 30th retains that status going forward as amber. And this because we're now in a stabilisation process for that service. And in addition, outside of that trust, we're also working on the disaggregation of education services and working hard to deal with the diseconomy of splitting those services whilst ensuring there's no impact on them going forward and how they're provided. Moving on to the next slide, the programme notes really summarise what I've covered earlier on the governance changes, the handover to myself and Jane during October by Paul. So the next slides move on to day 1 assurance, which George is going to pick up. So over to George.
Thanks, Lisa. Good evening, members. Good evening, colleagues. Francesca, if we just go on to the next slide just briefly, that would be great. So I think you've seen this slide before. This just gives a brief overview of the work that the team, a relatively small team, is doing around both day one assurance and more recently day one readiness, which I'll touch on at the end of this. But as you can see, a fairly significant number of quantum areas that we're looking at to ensure that that we are assured that the programme is progressing, and as I say, coming onto it, that we will be ready come vesting day on the 1st of April. So if we can just move on to the next slide, please, Francesca, which is the key slide. So as you can see on that slide, at a unitary level, there's just one area at the moment that we're reporting as an area of concern around the business IT systems and the disaggregation of the current county council systems. So in response to this, I'm pleased to say that the work is well underway to develop a data sharing agreement between the two unitary authorities ready for day one. And alongside this, the relevant IT systems are also being reviewed to ascertain the type of data that they hold and whether it indeed would need to fall under this data sharing agreement. And I'm pleased to say that we've added additional resource into this area. They started, as you can see there, at the beginning of November, and I'm pleased to say that since obviously this slide deck was prepared, good progress is being made, and I hope to report a more positive position next month. Clearly, adults and children's systems are being given the priority that they deserve, considering they're the largest of them all, and colleagues are working through both of those areas. Looking at the amber areas, again, whilst they're under increased watch, so not at an area of concern, under increased watch, again, positive progress has been made in the last few weeks. You've got a paper coming up from Martin Cox on the tier 1 to 3 staffing structures, so that's certainly alleviating that particular area. And similarly, good progress has been made on the DBS checking with regards to a direction of travel and clear timeline for day one. And the same can be said for the lead authority and hosted agreements and the transfer of contracts, where again, there's now a more detailed timeline, which is giving greater assurance back to the centre in terms of those areas of work. You'll see on the next slide, please, Francesca, there aren't any functions or services in the north that are currently causing us any concerns with regards to day one readiness. In terms of that, though, we are starting to turn greater attention to that. And in the last few weeks, led by Teresa, we've introduced on a Monday afternoon fairly extensive check and challenge sessions with the programme managers and the wider programme team to ensure that we will be ready for day one in those key areas. So we've looked at, for example, education and corporate services, and indeed the disaggregation of the county council services, and they will continue over the coming weeks, and hope to bring further reports back on those as they develop out. But with that, I'll hand back to Lisa.
Thank you, George. I think actually we're going to Glenn Hammonds.
I've just got a little bit more to do, Chair, on change management, Glenn, if that's okay. Yeah. So just moving forward, just a slight close, just to update members on the work that's going along with change management. So just picked out a couple of examples here. You will have seen earlier in the programme status that adult services was showing as green. And this slide shows how our change managers are working with those services to understand how it affects them and support them through what is a significant time of change for our workforce. And you'll see it includes some positive feedback from staff and some of the work and resources that we've been using, such as the case study videos and training sessions, and also blogs from senior members of staff going forward, just to reinforce those messages and to support those messages. The second example on the next slide looks at the children's service and illustrates also some different levels of support. Website launches, some support around recent Ofsted inspections, and around trust change champions ready to go for the post go live activities. On the next slide, something many of you will be familiar with, the rollout of MS 365 and the progress on that, never to be underestimated. And I think the stats at the bottom left-hand side of that slide really shows that. The most important aspect being here that not only are we rolling out MS 365, but we're also supporting staff to be able to use and understand the opportunities and the technology that brings, particularly around the use of Teams and online services and the efficiencies that can be made in the current working environment, which is very different to where we've been. Moving on to the next slide, an Eclipse. This is the system that supports the infrastructure for the transformation of adult services. A large training process has been undergone for staff. Part of that has been about recruiting super users, 77 super users, who are then able to support other staff in the use of Eclipse going forward. My last two slides just reflect on the amount of comms and engagement that is being developed in some areas of work that we're looking at. I think we mentioned earlier the logo and the branding is on the agenda for you tonight, and members will have received a recent bulletin regarding that and the proposed new Unitary logos for you to consider later on. We're looking at planning on how we can develop that bulletin idea so that all members across the North will have a regular update, perhaps on a fortnightly basis, of all the key things that are moving forward. And I think the emphasis on that moving forward towards vesting day is very important. And that's just a list of some of that communications and engagement activity that's going on at the moment, and our next steps for some of that work, particularly around the customer as well. The housing allocation policy consultation will launch, and there'll be some ongoing support for the work that we need to do around some of those branding decisions as well. Thank you, Chair. Over to Glenn on the finance.
Thank you. Glenn?
Thank you very much, Chair. In terms of the report on finance that we've got in front of us this evening, it provides an update on the financial position for the Future Northants programme, but it also provides an update in terms of the latest financial outturn positions for each of the sovereign councils too. So if I could just start off by going through the position in relation to the Future Northants programme. The investment budget for the year of £22.7 million is expected to underspend by £190,000. And this is the first variance that we are seeing this year in relation to the investment side of the programme. And the £190,000 is a result of a reduction in the estimated staffing costs, primarily as a result of appointments to the tiers 1 and 2 roles being slightly later than originally envisaged when the budget was set. On the benefits realisation side, the target at the start of the year was £14.5 million. As we've been reporting throughout the year, there have been pressures in terms of delivering all of those benefits within the current year. The current forecast is that there'll be an adverse variance of 548,000 in the current year. That is primarily due to a number of the benefits to being delivered within the children's and adults areas being delayed as a result of the COVID pandemic. However, all of those savings are anticipated to be delivered in future financial years. I'd like to take everybody on now to the latest forecast positions of each of the sovereign councils. You'll see from the table on page 3 of the report, across all of the sovereign councils, there is an anticipated shortfall or pressure being reported in the current financial year as a result of the shortfall in COVID funding across the county. However, I would point out that there is a difference between where the position of NCC, which is looking at a surplus, compared to all of the districts and boroughs, which are forecasting some deficits as a result of the shortfall in funding. All of the districts and boroughs are looking at the mitigations in order to offset those forecast overspends through a number of different sources. Certainly reviewing the positions on a regular basis and assessing the funding streams that get regularly announced and updating the figures from that point of view. Continuing to lobby government for further funding to cover those shortfalls. And ultimately, if those aren't coming forward, planning to utilise reserves in order to fund the balance. The final point I'd just like to make with regards to the report, and it's just a reminder that the overall benefits arising from the programme total £84.4 million, of which over 35 million are expected to be delivered beyond vesting day. Work is well underway looking at that 35 million and splitting it between the North and the West and including it within the draft budgets, which will be coming forward over the course of the next month. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Glenn. And I have got a question from Martin Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. It's not so much of a question, it's more of a comment. And I think through you, Chair, can we just say a huge thank you on all our behalf to the Change Champions for the excellent work that they're doing with regard to the programme. This is a vital part of the programme. And also, while on, I think it's worthy to say well done to our Chief Executive for his blog. I'm not a great blogger, but I know it's gone down extremely well. And I think it's very welcome to have some up-to-date information coming from our Chief Executive. That's all, Chairman.
Oh, that's marvellous. Thank you. Nobody else seems to want to say anything or ask any questions. So everybody must be happy. Would you like to propose then, Martin, while you're sitting there in front of me?
Happy to, Chairman.
Can I have a seconder? Jason Smithers seconds. Could we have a vote, please? Could you put your hands up? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 7, blueprint change request form. And this is Lisa Hyde.
Thank you, Chair. The blueprint change request, quite an important document tonight. If I could just at first just refer you to the appendices, because these are quite important. You've got 3 appendices to this report. One appendix A just covers a change request form. Appendix B is a cover control sheet. C is the approved service treatment list, and D rolls those lists up into service area. And the reasons why I refer to those, because they're quite important, is that the blueprint is a significant document. It's a large document. It was designed to show the source of the function, whether staff will be coming from the districts and borough councils, the county or both, the scope of activities, the potential staffing scope of the service, and any investment that had been identified to support transformation going forward. Because that is such a significant document, and because you approved that on the 24th of September, it is important that, as this report proposes, that we have a clear governance and recording process for any changes that are made to that going forward. So tonight we've got 2 things. We've got the approval of that governance process and recording process, but we've also got the first amendments proposed for that blueprint as outlined. Now, one of the reasons why those appendices is also important is that the spreadsheet gives a much clearer view, and we've shared that both with the trade unions and with staff, around the treatment of those services. So staff or yourselves can very clearly look down that spreadsheet, see where those functions are, and be very clear as to whether they're lead, host, provided by another provider, or all the different various treatments that they can be. So that's why that's quite an important document, and why we need to keep that up to date going forward. So as I say, the Shadow Exec approved the blueprint on the 24th of September. And it is proposed that all changes will be brought to this Shadow Executive using the change request form as outlined on page 48 to 51 of your agenda tonight. So they clearly show what the change in status would be and the impact on both the North and the West blueprint. So moving forward to those proposed changes before you tonight on page 49. So there are 3 changes proposed for adult services. These are for adults brokerage, commissioning and safeguarding, that originally 2 of those were proposed to be hosted by the North for the 12 months, hosted by the West and for the North to be the receiver, and adult safeguarding where they were to be hosted by the North and we were going to provide those. Going forward, the proposal is that all those 3 services can now be disaggregated. We are satisfied that to meet safe and legal, those 3 services can now be disaggregated, which of course is the overall long-term objective for all services moving forward, unless we have agreed that they are a lead as part of the blueprint. So they're those 3. Then I want to take the 3 that relate to public health, emergency planning, management commission and admin, and public health services and wellbeing. And the proposal in the original blueprint that they would all be disaggregated to the North and West. As members, I'm sure, can understand that we are proposing that during a national pandemic, that we should retain those services as they are, and that they should be hosted in the North, and the North being the provider for at least the first 12 months of the authority, and we would review during that 12 months that position. So just to make sure that those services are not disrupted during this period. And then the last one is the Children's Trust client function. So in effect, the service that is retained to manage and measure the performance KPIs of the Children's Trust. And to ensure efficiency, we are proposing that that service is provided as a lead provider in the North. We will still be providing that client function to the West on behalf of the West for the Children's Trust around the management of that key performance. So they're the key changes. You will see that the way that the change request form works is that it clearly shows the treatment both for the North on page 49 and then going into page 50, the impact on the West, the services for the West in the blueprint as well. And of course, the West considered this at their meeting on Tuesday night as well. So two items there, the process going forward and those changes that we're proposing this evening.
Thank you for that. I've got a number of people who want to ask questions or make statements, and starting with Jason. Jason.
Thank you, Chair. I take it you can all hear me okay on here?
Yes.
Yeah. So I just wanted to better understand, Lisa, from the function to the current treatment to the revised treatment of services, be it hosted, disaggregated, and so on. There's no mention of any financial impact or negative or positive within the programme. Would that not be a nice column to have in there to sort of show if there was any financial impact in those changes moving forward? Or there's a reporting mechanism for that I've missed?
That is something we can take on board. I would suggest that all of those there are negative in terms of that going forward, but that does not necessarily mean that other decisions going forward would have any impact financially. So that is something that we could add in, and we will note to add in if there is a financial impact of doing that. Yes.
I just think it would give a little bit of comfort to other members that we are still watching the pennies there and making sure that we're not increasing our difficult situation financially.
Absolutely, councillor, take that on board.
Lovely, good. Martin Griffiths.
Thank you, Chairman. And it just seems a very short time ago that we had the discussion around the blueprint. And a blueprint is a design, a plan, or a technical drawing. And we said it would need to be changed. And I think this process that Lisa has outlined formalises the change process and gives it the right level of scrutiny by this executive chairman.
Thank you for your kind words. David Jenny.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just slightly concerned about the wording that's being used here, because as I understood it, Lisa said these three public health things were going to be hosted in the north, and yet on this, to me, reading this third column, says receiver. Now, does that mean that the north is the receiver, or is the west is the receiver? I was thinking that these were services that were going to be hosted in the west, and we were going to be receiving them. So I'm just a little bit unclear about the terminology.
Thank you, David. Lisa.
Yeah. So you'll see there's two tables. So under description of request change. So the first table follows the functions to be changed on the North Unitary blueprint, and the public health, the three areas, 2 areas relating to public health, and then the one emergency planning, quite clearly show they will be hosted for 12 months by the North as the provider. And then, of course, the mirror to that is the West table further down that goes over onto page 50 that shows that they will be the receiver. So we would be hosting those services in the North.
David,
Right.
is that okay?
Yeah, it's the bit about the West table that, yeah, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else wants to ask any other questions or say anything?
It says West there, doesn't it?
Right. Well, in that case, then, have I got a mover, please?
Move the report be noted, Chair.
Sorry?
Move that the report be noted.
Thank you. Jason is moving. Have I a seconder? David, Jenny, could we have a show of hands, please? That looks unanimous to me. Marvellous. We now come on to item 8, task and finish group updates, civic functions, very important. I'm now handing over to Martin Hammond.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the report of the Civic Functions Task and Finish Group, and that was chaired by Councillor Partridge Underwood, who no doubt will want to say something after I've introduced it. It makes recommendations regarding the office of Chairman of the Council, the style of office, and the support that the office should have. And it proposes that the traditional mayoral leadership that we've experienced in most districts should be vested in town councils, and that the new council should be presided over by chairman, supported by deputy, and invested with a modest level of insignia, regalia, to our gravitas, without detracting from the historic civic traditions that the major towns will continue. And there are a set of recommendations there. I'll just take members through the highlights of those. On the issue of the chairmanship, it's proposed that, as you'd expect, the annual council elects a chairman, they serve a year, they elect a deputy chairman, and the expectation would be that that deputy chairman becomes the chairman in the following year, all things being equal. In terms of the regalia and insignia, as members of the Task and Finish Group felt that they wanted the office to have some level of dignity, so that it felt comfortable to be that office holder when you're mixing with other civic leaders locally and regionally. So the proposal is that it should have a chain of office and a row. We believe that both of those can be sourced from within our existing collective stock of rows and chains that exist in the county. Obviously, a lot of them will be going to the town councils, but there are spares, the report indicates, that could be repurposed. And some due diligence is just to do that. In terms of office space, it's usual for a chairman to have some hospitality space that they can use. So it's proposed that accommodation within the corporate HQ could be found for that purpose. Equally, the facility to appoint chaplains or even chaplains is recommended. Secretarial support on the experience of those two councils which have got a chairman, so that's East Northamptonshire and the County Council, shows that there's probably 1 to 2 days work for secretarial support over the course of the week. So again, something which hopefully can be accommodated within someone's existing job role. The Task Funding Group is not recommending that the office attracts a car or driver on the grounds that the volume of business doesn't warrant it, certainly doesn't warrant the expense that would involve. The issue of allowances was discussed, and it's recommended that the independent remuneration panel, which is looking at members' allowances, should also be asked to look at the allowances for the chair and deputy chair. And the last point really is about the coat of arms, and the Task and Finish Group with the view that, given you've got a discussion later on about the logos, that there was no need for the coat of arms for the new authority, and particularly given the expense that would entail, that was recommending that no further action be taken about that. Chairman, you've got 8 recommendations there. Whether you want to individually or collectively, I'll leave to you. But Councillor Partridge Underwood might want to say a couple of words as well.
Tom Partridge, Tom, would you like to add?
Yes, of course, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been a privilege to serve on this working party. In presenting this this report, I must say thank you to the professionals for adding their part to it. Andrew Hunkin and also Martin, who's just reported there. The councillors that served on this group was John Paul Carr, Colin Wright, Elaine Francis, and Chris Smith-Haynes. We really worked together well. The reasons are in the report, and Martin's already explained the reasons, but if there's any further comment, all's prepared to take questions. Thank you.
We'll have a question. I think it's a question from Stephen North, Tom. So here we go.
Oh, right.
Stephen?
Well, not necessarily for Tom, Chair, but thank you anyway. And excellent report, and all very logical. So very much support all the work that's been done. And this isn't however, and Chair, I don't necessarily not expect this to happen just because it's not part of the recommendations. But I think part of this, as in 4.3, is quite fundamental in going forward in relation to obviously seeking support from East Northampton Council and Rushden Town Council in relation to the chain, because obviously that would leave quite a bit of difficulty if not. Now, I'm not saying it's missing from the recommendations as such, and as I said, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen anyway, but you may wish to formalise it to include it just to make sure it does actually happen, because obviously that would leave things quite short if it doesn't, or there isn't an agreement from Rushden Town Council or ENC, and I'm not suggesting for a moment there wouldn't be. Thank you, Chair. But everything else is absolutely excellent and very much supportive.
Martin, did you want to?
Yes, we can put some words in there that gives Councillor Bell the assurance that we're seeking.
Chairman, can I just say a word about that? And thank you for those comments, Councillor North. That has already been brought to my attention. We're very conscious that we were quite divided at one point about doing this on the cheap or doing a proper job. And we realise that there's things in our vaults, in our strong rooms and things like that, all over Northamptonshire, really. And I was talking to JP Carr, one of my fellow councillors on this group, and I'm sure that there's a set of chains from the old rural district council. We're going through the chains and the artifacts in the vaults. I believe that there's things that we can reuse rather than spend money on. But I do take the point about the East Northamptonshire.
Stephen, did you want to come back with anything on that?
No, Chair, and I wouldn't be, it's just a pragmatic point, and I'm saying not one for a moment saying it would be missed. I think you can either obviously add it or just expect it to happen, but if it doesn't happen, then, or there's some kind of issue, then that does leave a question mark over it. So it's just a tidying up exercise, Chair. So
Does anybody else
didn't
have
mind them.
anything they want to say? I propose, if everybody's content with this, to take it as one vote. So with that in mind, could I have a proposer, please?
Happy to propose, Chair.
Stephen North proposing, and a seconder.
Happy to second, Chairman.
That's a seconder. Could we have a show of hands, please? Looks unanimous to me. Yep, unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We now come to item 9, asset capital schemes and reserve notification process, Chester House estate update. And we have got tonight Councillor Lizzie Bowen, who's going to speak to this report. Lizzie, very welcome. Hello. You're on mute. You're not now.
Yeah? No? Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Lovely to see you all and meet some of you for the first time. You have a number of papers relating to this particular programme. The 2 of the 3 papers are to do with the Cabinet meeting on the 10th of November as the Sovereign Authority. You'll see that things have moved on a little bit, and you have the 3rd item, which is the Asset Capital Schemes and Reserve Notification process, which was agreed on the 23rd of July. The first thing I'd like to say is that the term Chester Farm has been used for some time now, and you will see as the paperwork goes forward that we're changing to term Chester House Estates. And that is due to the fact that we are closely aligned with the National Heritage Lottery Fund, and it is their request, quite a firm request, that we do not have large animals on this estate. And therefore, moving back to what the site used to be called years ago, which was Chester House, we have adopted that term. So it's now Chester House and is based very much on the edict of Chatsworth House in terms of style and vision going forward. Obviously, there's been a lot of interest over the years on this, and you will know, particularly in the north, that the history of this project dates back to 2002. And it was bought by the county then. For those of you that have not visited the site yet, although I'm sure a lot of you have over the years, it's a complex of listed farm buildings at the centre with land running down to the River Nen. It's actually a beautiful site and is going to be an amazing asset, which obviously will reside in the north. And I think having been on this project now for over 18 months, I can see the vision, and I've actually brought some slides along tonight if we have time to show you for this vision for the future. So I did request those get sent over to you. When I finish speaking, if you want to see those slides, I'm very happy to quickly whip through them. The site, as you will know, some of you, is of SSI heritage and archaeological significance. It's complex because not only is it complex from NCC's perspective in that we've had this sort of staggered stop-start over the years, but we also have a number of external bodies such as the Heritage Lottery Fund, Nenscape, Heritage England, and a number of organisations that are keen to make sure that they put their stamp on it. Just as a reminder, the site was developed by Shayla that went into liquidation 2/3 of the way through the project. The National Heritage Lottery Fund had given £3.97 million to this project in 2013. And they have been pushing for us to get things going. And we, sort of 18 months ago, myself and Kerry came on board and pushed to get a new process for contract out. That was through a fusion process, which is a sort of a national framework. And that went out in March 2020. But sadly, and I think COVID has something to do with this, what came back did not adhere to that framework. So then we were in the difficult situation of, well, what do we do now? COVID is changing the whole landscape. We then had to come up with a new business plan, and we put it back out to tender on a more flexible framework in October of this year. We're now at the final stages of the costings of that process, and we will be looking tomorrow night to finalise the contract, to go forward. I say finalise the contract, finalise the finances so that it can go forward to the project board next Monday afternoon. Now, Councillor Tom Partridge Underwood, who I've spoken to several times and have seen on Zoom, will be at that meeting. But what I'm at pains to point out to you is that this is a project that will be heavily populated by yourselves in the north. I'm there driving it forward at the moment through NCC, but because I have Jason very closely aligned on this, I'm updating him constantly, and is an agenda item in every cabinet meeting, and he will ensure that you are all updated as much as you need. I am very happy to take anybody out on the site, subject to the regulations, but I want to feel like you have ownership of this as much as I have had ownership over the last 18 months. Okay, so we're at that final stage, and in addition to myself and Kerry, we have a very competent team on this, and I want to reiterate that. We have a consultant called Darwin Jones, who is an expert on these projects and was recommended to us by the Heritage Lottery Fund, and I have to say, without him, I'm not sure we'd have got through the complexities of this. But what is even more exciting is that we have a young business development manager who has come from a background in this field. He is young, but he has experience of a 500-acre site, just sort of about an hour away, called Sakewell Farm, but also another one at Cotswold Farm in the Cotswolds. And he, I have to say, has brought a very refreshing update to our business plan. So I just wanted to assure you that we as a project team feel confident with that business plan, and we just need to get the finances finalised. In the report, the capital report, which has Kerry's name on the front, there are a number of recommendations, and I just want to go through with you those recommendations so that you're clear on the finances and clear that where we're going forward. So the first point is to endorse the updated business plan, which notes the progress that we've been going through over the last 6 months. The media launch was going to happen in December, but obviously with everything that's going on at the moment, it was not appropriate to do the media launch in December. We do, however, have a rather good video that you will get to see shortly. We're just in the middle of sort of modifying that at the moment. We have a recommendation for approval for the uplift of budget of £850,000. Now, what I don't want you to think is that is extra money. That is a bond payment, which when Shayla went into liquidation, they owed us that money, and that is with their the oversight body at the moment, and will be released to us on completion of the contractual work. Then the uplift of the capital budget by 722 in respect of the Heritage Lottery Fund. There's a technical adjustment there, so it's not extra money. The final area of uplift, we are hoping to get an extra monies from the Heritage Lottery Fund of £750,000. Now, the fact that the Heritage Lottery Fund initially said that they had no faith in this project 18 months ago, and now are willing to give another £750,000 is credit to everybody from the north and the west and from NCC who've been involved in this project, because we've really worked hard to turn it around. So what I'd like to do very quickly, if you've got time, is show you some of the artistic impressions of what it's going to look like, and then if you've got any questions.
Let's
Does
do
that
that.
sound reasonable?
Can we do that? Yeah, let's do that then.
Okay, so but I won't, I won't spend long on it because I know you've got quite a list here. So this is the logo, the Chester House Estate, and the deer is an animal that has links back to many hundreds of years ago, that is part and parcel of this estate in the olden days. Next slide, please. This is my favourite artistic impression. You will see there you've got a lake in the background, but you've also got the Nen Valley River. And on that river, you have moorings, you've got a bridge, and those moorings will be able to stop, stay for a few hours, stay overnight, and be able to walk, as you can see, up that path through into Chester Farm, Chester Farm and Chester House Estate. When they get there, they've got a number of options. If you can go on to the next slide, please. You've got the Ark, where you've got all the storage of the archaeological interest. On to the next slide, please. They can enjoy the open courtyard with the artisan shops. There's a cafe. There is sort of a grocery section to it. There's small boutique bespoke shops in that courtyard. Next slide, please. Or they can go to the restaurant. We are going to have in-house caterers. There will be a bed and breakfast, and those in-house caterers will be working on a sort of a niche offering at Chester House Estates, which will, if it's anything like the one at Delaprey Abbey that Darwin, the consultant, worked on, will be amazing, and will be in fitting with the whole site. Next slide, please. Again, this is the cafe side of the restaurant. You can see beautiful oak panelling. A lot of that panelling is already in place in situ before my time, but I think will add value once it's been restored. Next slide, please. Here you have the small animals. We can't have the big animals, but we can have the small animals. So you'll have a sort of a petting area, and you'll have schools and colleges and universities coming to visit. Obviously, the schools will be interested in the small animals, but looking down to the house, the schools will want to go and enjoy the shops and the food on site, and also the small pop-up shops on the left-hand side. We have, I sent Jason this morning a big list of all the university activity that's going to go on: Malton College, Tresham College, Northampton University, and that is just to start with. There'll be an archaeological placement students coming here. There will be all sorts of added value areas which you can't put a price on in terms of, you know, the value, but in terms of what it adds to the county and particularly to the north, I think you will be very pleased with. Next slide, please. So here we have the museum and the interpretation centre. There will be live video showings there, very much on the sort of the top end of the museum scale, and we are looking for a museum accreditation. Next slide, please. We're coming to the end, by the way. There you have just an example of one of the shops with the delicatessen side of things. And then just towards the end here, we've got two more slides. We are also offering a wedding venue service. There are two options. There'll be a pop-up marquee that goes up, but there will also be, through the threshing barn, a beautiful wedding venue, and also for corporate events. If you go on to the next slide, you'll see inside, which I know from the market research that we've done already, there will be huge demand for this. And we have an external public relations company that have done all the research and are already starting to heavily market to businesses, to all sorts of organisations that have already expressed an interest, and that will move forward. And then the final slide, we also plan to have events, festivals, all sorts of other options. So as you can see, it's a very diverse offering, and I think something that if we can just get it completed, you'll be very proud of.
Well, incredible.
Absolutely.
Would Tom, would you like to say a few words?
Councillor Bowen always leaves me quite speechless, breathless, because her enthusiasm is absolutely wonderful. And the scheme owes an awful lot to her. I've just been involved very recently, as you know, in fact, the last 6 weeks, I believe. But it's all that she's outlined in her presentation. So thank you, Councillor Bowen. I'm sure others have got questions.
Right, I've got Jean Addison. Jean.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I feel a bit like a damp squid now. Thank you, Councillor Bowen, for that very enthusiastic presentation. However, many councillors have contacted me about this project that have far more experience than I have over many years. And they've got great concerns. This project, as we're all well aware, has been a bit of a leaking bucket. That no matter how much the money's been poured in, it's never filled. We're going through difficult times. We're having to pull together a budget, and we've got extra pressures with COVID, which is well documented. Chair, could I suggest, just to allay people's fears over this project going forward, because we will be taking on responsibility, could there be a presentation to other councillors, or even the slides sent out with a full explanation of what's going on? Because people are concerned that we will be paying for this many, many years down the line, and it's an extra pressure on taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, if I can come in, it's Kerry. I would welcome the opportunity, as I'm sure Jack, the business manager on site, would, to to really sort of share the vision. I mean, I completely appreciate, as Lizzie said, that the site has had a checkered history, and Lizzie and I have worked extremely hard to turn things around over the last year to 18 months. And we haven't quite got it over the line yet, but our vision and our ambition and the stakeholder commitment and the wide range of partners that are now involved puts us in a much better position than we've been before. But I appreciate that not everybody understands where we are and just knows some of that checkered history, so more than happy to engage in any way that's appropriate.
Good,
thank you.
Thank you for that interjection. Martin Griffiths.
Thank you, Chairman. As this is in the borough of Wellingborough and is also in my county council ward, I would like to say a few words and particularly thank everybody for the tremendous progress that's been made in the last 12, 18 months on this. It is going to be a tremendous facility in years to come. I like the slides. I like the idea of the courtyard. And if anybody has visited before lockdown, Castle Ashby Estates, they will know how popular those sort of artisan shops and facilities can be. And I think that would be very welcome in Northamptonshire. There are a lot of volunteers that are eager to get involved in archaeological events as well. I know that because I've spoken to them and I've had regular contact with them. The footbridge needs repairing and that is a considerable outlay that we need to sort out, but I'm sure we can do that. But the biggest thing of all is that this will be the catalyst to develop the Nen Valley as a tourist attraction, right from Wellingborough embankment, right through Rushden, through past Rushden Lakes and down further down the Nen Valley. And I think it's just what we need as we come through this dreadful pandemic. Yes, it's cost a lot of money, it's caused a lot of headaches, but I think now we should take the opportunity and get it done and get it open to the public as soon as we possibly can, Chairman.
Chair, if I could just interrupt there and just say that the footbridge is being sorted, Martin, and the planning has gone ahead for that. And also, what I didn't mention was the walkway and cycleway, which you very kindly highlighted, but that cycle path goes all the way up to Oundle, right past Chester House Estates, all the way up to Oundle. It is going to be the most amazing offering for the future.
Thank you. David, Jenny?
Thank you, Chairman. Just as a slight correction there, Lizzie, the Greenway unfortunately doesn't get to Oundle yet. There are gaps in on the way. We are working on it. As far as Chester Farm is concerned, putting my quantity surveying hat on and reading the papers that were circulated to us, I was significantly concerned. There are gaps in the papers which do not give the Unitary Council the information that is necessary for it to go ahead with governance. So I took it upon myself to ask some questions, which resulted in me being invited down there on, well, yesterday. And I met the site manager, who filled in an awful lot of gaps for me very constructively. Very knowledgeable young man who obviously is wanting to drive this scheme forward well. I think the aims and objectives that have been created and are in the paper are absolutely totally brilliant. They deserve every support we can get. However, there are one or two minor issues that the Unitary Council will need to sort out in terms of governance. There are some financial risks to this project because it's a scheme which has laid dormant for 2 years due to the Shaler bankruptcy, and B, it's an alterations job. Now, I know to my cost over the years, whenever we've had to deal with alterations work, we've always uncovered something which we hadn't anticipated. And that's no condemnation whatsoever of the design team. It's just a fact of life. It happens. So I am concerned that there is a risk of increased costs. We're not going to know that until we start, or we're probably not going to know that until we're 3/4 of the way through. And we do need to ensure that we have the right governance in place, the right experience to make sure that these sort of things are controlled. And so far, though, you know, that needs more work doing as far as Northamptonshire is concerned. But I'm absolutely delighted to make sure tonight I shall certainly be voting for support of the scheme. I take on board Councillor Addison's comments. That's where I was starting from as well, but I'm well and truly in support of it now. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Teresa Clark.
Thank you, Chair. If I may, just add a few comments, really, just to say that I think Lizzie and Kerry have done a fantastic job of turning around what was a very difficult project. And when I arrived here 2 years ago, I looked at this project and thought you wouldn't start from here. And unfortunately, it was something I inherited, and I had to make the best of it. Had we decided not to proceed, we would have had to pay back millions of pounds to English Heritage. And we didn't have millions of pounds at the time, but we did have a budget put aside to invest further in the site. I think, put all that aside and all of the challenge aside and the history, it is a very, very impressive site and a very valuable site. And I firmly believe it could be a good, profitable tourist attraction in the future. It will take a couple of years and a lot of goodwill and support from all of us. But I have no doubt that with the right, and I do believe they have the right people in place and the right management, it will be profitable. And the other thing to remember is it is an asset that's a county-wide asset, as well as a county-wide liability. So you will share the cost with the West, as you will have to then share the profit with the West at some stage. But it does have the support of the whole of the county. And I think that needs to be recognised and acknowledged, that the whole of the county recognises the value of this site and the value of completing the investment that was started. And I recognise some of the things that Councillor Jenny has said, because I picked some of those things up, and I do on a regular basis as well, as you can imagine and expect. And, you know, I do think that we need to get behind it, support it and sell it to the public in a really positive way. And once COVID is out of the way, I've no doubt we will start to see that move very quickly in a positive direction. So I do recognise it's not something you might start from now, but we're blessed with it, and we therefore need to do the best we can. And that would be my take and my advice.
Thank you for that. That's very useful. I've got Stephen North and then Jason. Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, sorry, I just wanted to follow on from Martin. Just very supportive of this, but in the wider context, and I think, and I appreciate we're focusing on the agenda item of the Chester estate, but I think certainly Martin and I have been talking for at least 3 or 4 years about, widening the tourism offer between, Wellingborough and Rushton, and obviously with the great success of Rushton Lakes. And I know Martin was very keen on to progress the embankment and supporting tourism and widening things there. And I think, with the second slide, linking in the walkways, obviously from the moorings up to Chester Estate, I think this is an excellent opportunity to be able to find there isn't necessarily a vision in place, but I think for the added value for Northamptonshire, where you can finally have the opportunity to be able to walk from the embankment in Wellingborough through to Chester Estate, obviously spend time at Chester Estate, then walk on to Rushton Lakes and take in the Widenend Valley. And in time, as Councillor David Jenny says, there are a couple of chinks, but one thing has been a great success is the Greenway in East Northamptonshire. And in time, if you can walk from Wellingborough all the way to the border and take in all the sites in North Northants, then what better is that? And I think it's the added value that this will add as part of a wider offer in time. So I appreciate we're focusing on this item, but I think the excitement is, Chair, that I think this is a real opportunity for the Nend Valley in a real promotional way. Thank you.
Great vision there, Stephen. Last word to Jason Smithers.
Yeah, well, thank you, Chair. And Stephen, I know you're an avid user of the Greenway because I quite often see you going down there myself. But look, this whole project was inherited. It was a difficult project. And if you chuck a bit of COVID in there as well, you can see the type of mix that you've had there. So I must really sort of pay tribute to both Kerry and Lizzie. Kerry obviously dealing with the emergency planning stuff as well with this alongside Lizzie. And you've got a committed team there, and you've got stakeholder involvement as well. So I think this is an absolute asset. I'm not going to go on because everyone said all these sort of things before, but it's a real asset to Northamptonshire. And to be honest, I think I'm quite happy to act as a conduit between NCC and the North Unitary here to sort of feed information through and regularly update you on that. And of course, what is good is the risk and reward side of this project. We all take the risk in the West and the North, and we all take the reward on the West and the North. And I think it'll be a lot of reward for the children and the adults and people that come and enjoy Chester House Estate. So well done, Lizzie. Well done, Kerry, as well. It's a really good piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm assuming you're going to propose.
I propose we make the
and Stephen, second it.
Very happy to, Chair.
Thank you. Can we have a show of hands, please? All those for? That's everybody. That's unanimous.
No, Chair, I'm abstaining at this stage.
Oh, are you abstaining? I do beg.
Yes, at this point. Not that I'm not in favour of it going forward, but I.
No. If you want to abstain, that's perfectly okay. We just want to make sure we get our records straight to you. Okay. Anyway, thank you for that. That was a good report. We now come to item 10, external audit appointment arrangements. And I believe Glenn Hammonds is going to speak to this report. Glenn?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. The report we've got in front of us this evening is regarding the arrangements we need to be putting in place for the appointment of external auditors. It is a statutory requirement for North Northampton Council to appoint its external auditors by the 31st of December 2020, ahead of vesting day. So in that regard, the public sector audit appointments, or PSAA, have written to the Shadow Authority requesting direction on how that we want to appoint our external auditors. The report in front of you this evening sets out 3 options within section 5 of the report about ways in which we could appoint the external auditors. The first one is a standalone appointment that we would run and do ourselves as a council. The second one is a joint procurement and appointment that we could do with another council or another body. And the third option is to opt in to the PSAA process, who would appoint an auditor on our behalf. Within the report, it clearly sets out the advantages and disadvantages of each of those options. And the recommended option that's proposed within the report is that we opt in to the PSAA process, as this is the option that most closely aligns to being safe and legal by vesting day. If the opt-in option is chosen, there is a clear process that we need to go through with the PSAA in terms of which auditor we would be have appointed. And that process is set out within paragraphs 4.6 and 4.7 of the report. I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you for that, Glenn. Has anybody got any questions? Can I have a proposer, please? Jason proposes. Can I have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chairman.
All right, Martin got them just before Stephen. Can we have a show of hands? That looks unanimous to me. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Right. Item 11, development of proposals for senior leadership structure. Rob Bridge.
Thank you, Leader. And first of all, it's great to finally be with you formally, and I would say thank you to everybody who's made me feel incredibly welcome, council staff and partners. Tonight I am presenting to you the next stage of setting up a new Unitary Council, and that's our new staffing structure following senior appointments that were made during the summer.
Chairman, could we improve the sound a little bit? I don't want to miss anything. Sorry.
A little bit more. Is that better, Martin?
Yeah, it's a little bit.
Sounds better.
Thank you. So just like the last item, the key thing here is ensuring we have a structure to ensure we can be safe and legal for us for day one, as well as setting ourselves up for the further transformation and changes we need to make as a new council. You will see in the report that there are a number of roles. First of all, a new director role placed on the tier 2 level post, and that post will go through a similar recruitment process to what happened with the senior appointments in the summer. The rest of the posts will then all be classed as tier 3 assistant directors, and that process will be delegated to myself as head of paid service, but we'll also have member stakeholder panels where appropriate. I think the structure sets out clear roles and accountability, but importantly, the sooner we can get the tier 3 roles in place, we can move forward with the aggregation and transformation that we need to do for the new Unitary for the 1st of April and beyond. We have started a 30-day consultation with staff who are affected by those proposals, and we're also engaging actively with the unions. We've offered one-to-ones and question and answer sessions with myself and Anna, who can be involved in, and we're considering that feedback for then select those, and we'll discuss and change things as appropriate if we feel that's necessary. I believe this structure really will give the opportunity for us to deliver your ambition and set up the council and save and live with us and beyond day one, moving on to that exciting transformation journey. I hope you can approve the recommendations set up in the report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Rob. Has anybody got any questions on this? No? Yes? Ian Jelly.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Rob, for that report. Absolutely support Rob's approach in this report. It's important that we get this right. You know, we're talking about the staff here. It makes the situation totally clear from the outset, and it avoids any confusion. And I think we owe it to the staff to have clarity and be open and transparent and factual from the outset in what is and can be a very difficult time for staff going forward. So I'm very happy to support this report and happy to propose it for approval, Chair.
Thank you. Has anybody else got anything they would like to say? Could I have a seconder? Jason Smith is seconding. Martin, did you want to speak on this report? A bit late in there.
Sorry, I was very slow on the hand, Chairman.
That's
But
all right. No, we'll pause and let you have your say.
thank you. Just before we come to the vote, just a word about Appendix 2, and thanks to all of those that took part in the earlier appointments. We've got a fantastic team of senior appointments in place now. And this next one, the place director and economy director, is another huge role. And if you look at the members that have been chosen to form the two of the three panels, because there will be a stakeholder, an external panel for stakeholders as well. I'm sure they won't mind me saying, but there is a huge combined level of service and intelligence and experience, both in place and growth, that are on these two appointments panels. So I think it will be a very robust series of interviews, and I can't wait for them to start, Chairman.
Thank you for that. I have a proposal and a seconder. Could I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now come to item 12, I believe, health and safety and wellbeing policy. So that will be Martin Cox.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to do a brief introduction on what we believe, certainly for our employees, a very important policy which we would like the executive this evening to endorse. This is the real heart of what Safe and Legal Plus means for our employees. This is the framework in which we are going to manage, ensure the health, safety and well-being of all our employees at work. It's the product of every single health and safety representative in our councils, all working collaboratively. It's been developed jointly with our trade unions, led by two senior colleagues, Jamie Scarborough and Sue Stagg. Today is the framework, effectively, and how we will manage those discussions going forward. Who will be responsible for what in our health and safety, where we can escalate things, where they need to be escalated, and ultimately how we guarantee to our employees that working for Northamptonshire is safe and we look after their individual and personal well-being. Nothing more important in this period of time, especially after this year, when dealing with COVID and moving to our tier 2, this is at the forefront of people's thinking when they're engaging with work, whether they're working from home or if they're critical staff in offices. There's nothing more important today. And I think this makes a significant symbol of what Safe and Legal Plus means. So with that introduction, Chair, I'll take any questions or any queries.
Thank you for that, Martin. Well done. Anybody go on to say anything, ask any questions? I'll just give it another minute because people do sometimes think about things. Nobody's asking questions. So we'll go, can I have a mover, please? Oh, Jean, sorry, Jean. It's very difficult. I've not got all of the screens up and I've got Ian Jelly seconding. Can I have a show of hands, please? That's unanimous.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. We now come on to agenda item 13A, logo and visual identity, and Councillor Jean Addison is going to speak to this report. Jean, hello. You're muted. Right.
Thank you, Chair.
No, you're on.
Is that okay? I think we've got some slides to go with this presentation, Chair. So thank you. Can we go on to the next slide, please? I've been waiting all night to say that.
Whatever.
Thank you, Chair. This has been a very, I have to say, joyful task and finish group, because the rest of the team on it have been fabulous to work with, and I thank them all. We wanted to set out to, as it says on this slide, to have clearly display the council. We wanted it simple, modern, and a flexible design, and accessible for people with visual impairment, etc. And I think that's what we've created. Can we move on, please? And I think you're all familiar now with the 3 designs that went forward to the survey. And I have to say, I think it's one of the best surveys in recent times that we've had a response to. So the surveys like the Castle on the Hill, but with some changes. Can we move to the next slide? So people didn't like the wavy river. They thought it looked like the sea. So we've made some of those changes. Next one. And this is the final slide that we put forward for your approval tonight. Can we move on to the next slide, please? As you see, it looks very clear and distinctive in many different formats. We have taken on board the environmental side of this, and it does look just as presentable in a black and white outline drawing as well, so that any large print runs will be saving on ink, etc. We carried out due diligence on this logo to ensure that we weren't infringing on any copyright, or that it wasn't too similar to any other logos. And I think that's all I need to say on it, Chair. I would just like to ask the executive for their approval.
Right, and before that, I'd like to ask them if they've got anything they want to say. Nobody got anything to say? Jean, being a member of this happy band, you're a great chair. Right, nobody. Can I have a proposer, please? Ian Jelly, and a seconder?
Thank you, Chair.
Stephen, thank you. Could I have a show of hands? Unanimous, away we go. Well done, Jean.
Thank you, everyone.
We now come to our agenda item 13B, visual identity branding, and I believe that Rachel Hand is going to speak to this report. Rachel?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Chair, and good evening, councillors. So this recommendations paper, it highlights and gives an overview of the priorities for branding, rebranding, and also in some cases debranding of items such as ID badges, signage, and so on. They've been identified as being necessary to rebrand for day one. We've gone for a 3-category approach, and whilst categorising as safe and legal for day one, we also realise that there may be items that need to be changed for customer need and cultural change. These are the items that we can brand, which will really help the public, staff and members to identify the council, and also to give the council its own new identity. So category 1, safe and legal, they're items that are sort of official, statutory or legal status, such as documentation for planning, licensing, elections, that kind of thing. Category 2 is a proactive rebrand, so kind of day 2 onwards, items that such as signage for buildings that are not customer facing. Then we've got category 3, which is an as and when rebrand or BAU, so business as usual. So they're sort of waste bins and that kind of thing. When they come to end of life, they'll be rebranded. So we're asking basically for agreement that category 1 items are to be rebranded using the FN Comms budget, and then category 2 and 3 are BAU. So it's that would fall to the Unitary Council to budget for those items as and when required from day 1 onwards. The paper also gives the committee an insight into how we plan to action the rebrand, or in some cases I mentioned the debrand, and this is a result of an extensive audit of the thousands of branded items across the districts and boroughs. So we're asking you to approve the principle of how we go about this, including delegated authority, and the recommendations are at section 3 of the paper. Chair, do you want me to read those out, or?
No,
okay.
no, they'll have read them, I'm sure.
Okay, perfect.
I've got Jason Smithers who would like to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a minor sort of observation. I note this one didn't go to the JIE. Did the West approve of this sort of approach in their last meeting?
Chair, I'm happy to answer that if you want me to.
Please, if you wouldn't mind, please.
Yes, Councillor Smithers, on Tuesday evening, it was agreed by the West Shadow Executive, the same approach.
Perfect. Well, I have no problems in recommending this.
So you're recommending it. Have I got a seconder?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Martin seconded. Can I have a show of hands? That's unanimous. No? Yes? That's unanimous. And that concludes the business for tonight. Thank you for coming. Stay safe. Look after yourselves.
Thank you, Chair. Good night.